in one of the birth care injury groups that I'm in. And, she was saying, well, I had my 4th-degree tear in 2020 and I'm planning a home water birth. And I was like, okay, so I'm coming in here and not mom, like I specified, I'm not mom shaming. I'm not judging you. I'm not fear mongering here. Like, let me preface this comment with all of those things, but you're so high risk at this point. Please rethink that decision. Please have your baby in hospital. Go somewhere where they have birthing tubs in the hospital if that's what you really want to do. But just make sure that you're somewhere where you can get adequate care. If you're home and you've already had a 4th-degree tear, and you've already had a hemorrhage, like, you don't know how high risk. She clearly didn't know how high risk she was. And then she was telling me that, okay, well, you are fear mongering and you're telling me that, my baby and I are going to die. And I was like, no, I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that you are putting your baby and yourself at risk with this decision, but here's all the information that I can give you. And she sent me back her evidence, which was screenshots from Instagram, from something that she follows in the UK, because she's there. And she's like, I don't know where in the world you think you are, but here in the UK, our rates are great and midwifery care here is great. And I was like, okay, but you don't seem to be aware of like what the real risks here are. Like, you're not going to have a healing birth experience that way, So the only thing that I could do was provide her with the information and say, like, good luck. I'm sorry that you feel this way, but here's the information. And if she decides not to take it, that's fine. But maybe somebody else will see it and think, oh, okay, well, maybe I am at a higher risk since this happened to me before. So it's for the lurkers, I guess. But
her provider wasn't telling her, no, you're high risk.
Right.
So of course she's not going to think she's high risk. If
right.
The provider's like, oh, we'll do this or that. And I understand that it's different sometimes for the midwives there, that they have to attend those births. But at the same time, if someone has to, but you tell your client, look, you could bleed out, your baby could die, as long as you understand those things. If I'm forced to attend this birth, right? But I don't get that's the feeling that's happening there. They're just going along with it and they're not informing the patients of the risks involved.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so scary.
Yeah. One of the things that drives me nuts about people with the UK when they start doing this whole like, oh, we know midwifery is bad in the United States and whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, you don't really understand how we have all our different levels of midwives and all stuff. One of the things that what kind of is just, it makes no sense really. There is high risk people having home births. Why? Those are medical midwives over there. They're medical trained. They work alongside of hospitals, doctors. They have to get like an approval for you to have a home birth. It's not like us. We don't just elect a home birth, pick a midwife that has nothing to do with the hospital, has nothing, it's a completely different system over there. They actually have to have they're doing their testing, they're doing their ultrasounds, they're doing stuff like normal, but a midwife might come to their house or do whatever, and they're doing it in a more of a natural way, I guess. But any midwife, this is just that. I don't care what level midwife you are. I don't care what country you live in. If you take on a patient or a client, depending on which way you look at it, if you take them on and they have a high risk history and you say, sure, you can have a home birth, you don't care about that person. You don't care if they make it. You don't care if their baby makes it. That's not good care. That's not safe care. So I don't care what level. I don't care what country. If a midwife is doing that, or a doctor even, if anybody is telling you you're good to go to have a home birth when you have high risk things already. And there's what's really, really interesting is that people don't believe that they are high risk.
Right.
I can't tell you how many people I have you're like, it's obvious we had a 4th-degree tear. Like, we are no longer low risk. Like, whenever we get pregnant after this, it's extremely dangerous for us. Like, it's extremely dangerous for our babies. Like, you get it, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of people that do not understand like what high risk means. Like, they really think like, I'm not high risk. And I'm like, yes, you are. And like, I'll argue with people. I'm like, you're over 35, like, you've had diabetes before you had what. There's so many reasons of why it bumps you into like the high risk category. And you have to get like extra monitoring, extra testing, extra ultrasounds. There's all this extra stuff. If you're doing all that stuff, like, birth is going to be extra for you too. Like, it's not an easy walk in the park. You're not low risk. And we asked Dr. Rebecca, I asked her one time, like, what makes somebody like high risk or low risk? And she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, the list is so long of what high risk is, because she was like, because it could mean anything. She's like, it doesn't even have to do with your female organs. It could be literally like, did you have any like blood issues before? Did you have any cancers before? Did you have any heart problems before? Did you have liver problems, like organ problems? Like, she's like, all these things that happen before you even get pregnant. And then she's like, and all that makes you high risk. Now we can look at the pregnancy side of stuff, of like other things that makes you high risk too. One of the interesting things is one of the moms, and I'm sure you've seen like Christina, when she was talking about her home birth, she had surgery on her uterus.
Right.
Before that, she told her midwife she had surgery, and the midwife said, completely fine. It's normal. No big deal. And she lost her kid. Found out later, if you have any type of surgery, even around that area, you are not low risk anymore.
Right.
But here's these midwives like, no, you're fine. You're still low risk. I'll take you. And we know it's happening not just in America. Everybody might want to be like, America's so bad over there. Okay, let me break it down for you people in the UK. We're really big. We are a really massive country, and your UK fits in one of our states here in America.
That's true. Yeah.
And there's 50 of us. And then we have also things that they're part of us, but they're not part of the 50, but they're still part of us. I was like, so in case we need to break this down for the other people that are overseas. Your one country is our one state here, and every state is differently regulated with laws. We have a medical board per each state, and then they all come together as united. And then midwives is just a lost in translation thing there, because we have nurse midwives that do work in hospitals, that don't work in birth centers, that don't do home births. They only work in hospitals alongside of doctors, medically trained to the highest capacity. And then we have all these other things that we don't know what the heck they are, and they just make up their own stuff. And some states legalize them, being like, here's a license, but we don't have regulations. So it's like, you don't know what you're going to get of what state you are. And there's another thing is like, you want home birth, you got to look up all your laws and you got to look up all your stuff. But even in other countries where they're doing it, some of them do it in a more safer way. Again, a doctor has to approve you to have your home birth. You have to see an OB throughout your pregnancy to have your home birth. They have an ambulance on standby where you are. You have to be so many miles from the hospital that you're going to go to. They do things in a very, very particular order to have a home birth. Do things still go wrong? Yes. Do women and babies still die? Yes. That is something that I cannot stress. Like, people are like, I live in another country and we have it, whatever. Well, guess what? Babies and mothers are still dying over there. Things are still really bad. And they have it way more figured out than we do over here. But we do have stuff that is, it's very, very rare, but there is a few of them. I think they're on the East Coast mostly. They have a hospital with a birth center attached to them. And it's mostly run by, like midwives and nurses, and the doctors kind of go in. But the thing is it's attached. So if any emergencies, they literally just wheel the bed to the OR right there. And you have a doctor that's on the wing constantly checking charts and checking, your little monitor reading stuff all the time. that right there is like, you want an out of hospital. There's your birth center right there, but not the rest of the birth centers aren't like that. So there's your safest other option. So I think we have so many gaps of what things look like. And I can't tell you how long it took me to figure it out, because I was like, when I first got into this, I was like, oh, we can make home birth safer. Right. I was like, really believed I could make home birth safer. Like when I started down this road of this path of like informing people and figuring it out what happened to myself, and I wanted to change laws. And I was like, we're going to make it safer. We're going to make it better for families and all this stuff. And then as time went on and I learned about my laws, and I learned about California's laws, and I learned about Florida's laws and New York, and I started learning about the laws here. And then I started hearing about from the Canadian lost moms, and I'm hearing from the Australian lost moms and the UK. I was like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was, because all of us have a similar story, but yet no matter the level of midwife, our kids all still died. All of us went through this traumatic experience. So I was like, maybe this isn't a way to keep it as safe as I think. So as much as I was like, we can change things, the more that I dived like deeper into it, and the more that I learned about the lack of everything that we have of regulations, laws, of what our midwives know of education and not education, how their ego kind of rules things. The more I learned about it, I was like, we can't really make it safer, because first off, the midwives and the birth attendants, sometimes they don't even want to be called midwives. They don't want to change anything. They like the system for what it is right now. So how can we make changes for safety if the people that are running and doing the show, like doing the whole show and business thing, you can't even get them to be on board to make things safer and better anyways. So that was a big thing where I was like, you know what, I'm done, which I won't lie to you, years ago, before I had my rainbow, I worked with nurse midwives. I was like getting in the system, because I was like all about meeting with people, sitting down right here in my state, and was like, we need to change laws. Like me and other lost parents were like, we need to change the laws here in Nevada. That got nowhere. Nobody wanted to hear us. There's a lot more midwives that will band together. With a lot of us have been silenced, and we've been shamed, and we get pushed aside. So that it's hard to get us all together. So I was like, okay, what other angle can I get in there to do this? So I started working with nurse midwives who want changes, because they are the highest level, but yet they're being thrown down with like CPMs and lay midwives just because they have a midwife in their name. And they're like, I'm not like that. I went to school. Like, I want you to be safe. Like, I want everyone to survive. So I worked with them, and we met with CPMs. We met with like all these lay midwives and all these birth people, and worked on like in person, online, over the phone, trying to figure out what we can do to improve birth. And most of the time, what I would hear when I was like, I want to make it better, was, you're a grieving mother. You kind of, you need to have a healing birth experience. You need to kind of like let this go. You're going down a journey that's of grief and vengeance. It was like I was like getting vengeance or something, like revenge or something. And I was like, that's not what this is about. And so looking at all the stuff, I did go the angle of like, let's get with the midwives and have them make it better. And then when it came down to it, I found out that's how like things really changed for me. Was I was like, the midwives don't care either way. They're just making money. It's all cash. And, bye, next one. They're worse than any doctor of like how we thought like doctors are number games. Oh no, it's way worse. They pretend like hardcore to be your friend. They're like, oh, I'll feel your baby. And they're all like super nice to you. And then they're just like, next. Okay. Next. Like it's a really bad business. So that's like something like thinking about it is like, there's no way to change out of hospital birth to make it better. If they wanted to change it, maybe, but it's just not a possibility. I don't think it is. Like really, really, really thought like my state was going to get some laws here in the past couple of years since COVID. They were putting all the stuff with COVID. So it was a lot of like Zoom meetings and you know what I mean? Like over the phone
Right.
stuff, which is fine because we got like our capitals up north and stuff. So it works out for everybody. We can all be together and work on this together. But it was like, you had like medical professionals, doctors, nurses, nurse midwives, you know, families saying, we want a license. We want to make it better. We want to have an improvement. We want to have a better transfer plan. Like we
Right.
want to make it safer for transfers to come in, make it easier for records. And we want to just make it like a smoother, better experience, less traumatic. And here was the midwives like totally being like, you're taking away our rights. You're taking away our freedoms. It was nothing ever about the families. It's always been about the midwives. And so it's just, there's no change. There's never going to be any change from that because it's like, you're better off just being aware of who you're getting in bed with because you can't change them. You know what I mean? They like it the way that they like it. They've been doing it for decades, unfortunately.
And the thing is that you said a minute ago, the whole concept of a healing birth afterwards, like in the birth injury groups that I'm in on Facebook, people are like, oh, well, you know, this is the way that I can have a healing birth after all of this trauma. And I'm like, that's not going to be a healing birth for you. You know, a healing birth for you is going to involve being in a hospital, getting better monitored, being monitored in better ways, constant fetal monitoring. You know, there's no way to do that safely anywhere other than a hospital. Like there's just not, you're going to be high risk. The best thing for you is going to be being surrounded by a medical team who knows your history and also being aware of your own history. Do your own research, read through your medical records, see what went wrong, empower yourself with the information that you have at your fingertips. You can always request your medical records. You know, that's the best healing birth that you're going to have. If you plan a C-section, depending on how bad your tear was or how bad your injury was, if you're planning a C-section, it can be completely different. You know, you'll have a completely different experience, but you know, you'll have control. And the most healing birth that you can have post that kind of trauma is, you know, you and baby are okay. You know, when you get to that other side, you know, that mom and baby are both healthy, do whatever you can to control that, but you're not going to have that experience at home. You're just not, I don't know what the numbers are in terms of what an additional risk would be, you know, after you have a birth care. You know, I know that you're at higher risk afterwards for your next birth. At least that's what my OB and colorectal surgeon told me. I don't know what those numbers are, but I imagine that, you know, you're going to be susceptible to all of this stuff again. It's going to be in your history. Whoever you have, you know, as your midwife or whoever you're going to have at home, if you don't adequately prepare them for what you went through, you know, you would be risked out by any doctor anywhere in the world for a home birth. You just, there's no way. You're just at risk for another hemorrhage, at risk for more tearing. And there are people who are like, oh, well, you know, I had a 4th degree tear in this year. And then, you know, when I had my second, I only had a 2nd degree tear. So it's okay. You know, you can have another birth that, you know, you don't have a horrible experience after. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not thinking about all of the other people who, you know, have multiple 4th degree tears because they don't want to listen to providers who say, you know, you need to have a C-section next time around. Yeah, I mean, when I met with my colorectal surgeon, like 3 weeks after giving birth, the after asking me if I was one and done, she was like,
Yeah.
there's no way there's no way that you'll ever have a vaginal birth again. And I was like, okay, that's fine with me. Like, I didn't want it to begin with.
For real. But you know what though? You brought up a good point though, because we do have doctors, and this is what I see a lot in VBAC actually. We do have doctors that are like, this is not a good idea for you. Where they're like telling somebody that wants a VBAC really, really bad. And the doctor's like, given your history of what happened last time or what happened this, whatever, it's not an option for you. It's not a safe option for you. It's not something that I would recommend. I think it would be better to just plan a C-section. And they don't like the answer. So they're online looking for like another doctor, another option. And sometimes the option that they find are these midwives that are like just hanging out, looking for, it's just that black spider sitting there like waiting for you to like come into their little area, and it's like, and it does happen. And I've seen it so many times